So, I want to propose a very simple buff to Kapkan, and maybe to Frost, although I am more on the fence with her regarding my idea for a buff. The buff would be to give Kapkan trap vision in the same way that Lesion has trap vision on his traps. The reasoning is pretty simple. Lesion currently still offers far more than Kapkan ever does against good opponents. To make the power level difference obvious, I'm going to highlight what each of their traps do. Kapkan's traps have to be placed on doorways or windows only. They do 60 base damage on trigger, with slightly decreased damage to higher armor operators. The traps are very visible and can easily be shot. There are 5 of them. They make a noise, i.e. explode, when triggered. Now, Lesion traps can be thrown onto the ground anywhere. They do 4 damage a tick and slow movement and have to be pulled out, which takes a couple of seconds for the animation to finish. The traps are invisible, fairly hard to spot, and are generated over time until Lesion has had 8 of them. They also show up in Lesion's vision, so that he knows when a trap triggers, alongside the audio cue of them triggering, similar to the Kapkan trap explosion. So the biggest advantage that Kapkan has over Lesion is that he does more damage, and has all of his traps available at the start of the round. Lesion, however, has the advantage of having far more flexible traps, and traps that are far harder to see. Based on this comparison, they do seem to be balanced in the sense that they specialize with their traps at 2 different things. But in my opinion, the damage advantage of Kapkan's traps isn't all that useful. So I want to ask how valuable damage really is in Siege. Because Siege is a low time to kill and high lethality game. A lot of the time when you take damage you die, assuming that the damage of course comes from somebody's gun. So with this in mind, how good are Kapkan's traps? Given that they no longer do lethal damage, Kapkan's traps most of the time, if not spotted and shot, simply do damage to an enemy. It feels really rare that his traps down and injure people, let alone actually get the final kill. So in my opinion and my personal experience playing him, Kapkan's traps seem somewhat underwhelming. However, there are issues with how you can possibly buff them. You could make them do more damage, but then they would become a more numerous version of Frost's bear traps. You could make them less visible, but then they would become a more damaging Lesion trap. You can't really change where they can be placed, because that would break the design limitation of Kapkan's tripwire style traps, being limited to doorways and windows. So what options are we left with for buffing them then? One possibility would be to decrease the amount of time it takes to dismantle a Kapkan trap, and regain it for placing somewhere else. I think this is a pretty cool idea in the sense that it wouldn't impact at all how quickly Kapkan can set up his traps at the start of the round, and so you would still have to be pretty quick to get everything set up with him, but it would allow him to optimize his trap setup as a round would progress. If he gets intel from his team that they think there's a big push coming from one direction of the map, and Kapkan's trapped an area away from there, he could far more feasibly dismantle his current setup quickly and relocate and still find future use for his gadgets. The other possibility though, which I think would be the most logical choice for its simplicity and proven utility, would be to give him Lesion's trap vision. As mentioned, once a Lesion trap has been thrown down, Lesion can see it through walls and from across the map, and if it gets triggered or destroyed, Lesion will be able to see the lack of trap and make an assumption that someone is probably over there. Very useful information to have indeed. Giving Kapkan this ability to see his traps from across the map and make assumptions about player locations based on his traps triggering or not would give him some of Lesion's extra utility. In this way, he would become more of a hybrid intel and trap operator, more similar to Lesion. This would leave Frost as the trap operator with the downing capability, would leave Lesion as the trap operator who slows pushes, and gives Kapkan the utility to be a contender to Lesion by providing damage over Lesion's slowed movement. It would also prevent Kapkan from becoming just a walking dude with a gun if all his traps get avoided or disabled, as at least if they get disabled, Kapkan can see which trap was destroyed and move to intercept whoever is presumably where that trap used to be. Now, a possible argument against this trap vision buff would be maybe that it would make Kapkan and Lesion too similar. I disagree, as personally, I think Lesion's intended value and identity is to be the operator with traps that slows down people when they step on the goo mine. It isn't really to do damage, hence his recent nerf from 8 tick damage down to 4, and really I don't think he was ever intended to be picked for his vision utility. It just seems to be something that he has that's a pure bonus and massive addition of utility to him as an operator. This vision is largely what makes him such a better pick over Kapkan, as he now does two things, slowing people down and giving vision, whereas Kapkan still only does one thing, which is to do damage, and very unreliably at that. Give Kapkan the same trap vision, and suddenly you have to make a meaningful choice between whether you want damage and trap vision, or whether you want movement slow and trap vision. I feel like this would level the playing field between these two operators considerably. Would it make Kapkan too strong though? I don't think so. His traps would still be very visible as they currently are, and therefore against a careful attacker who's droning and taking their time, they would still often probably just end up getting shot and destroyed. In addition, he still would be limited to placing his traps at specifically doorways and windows, making finding his traps far easier than finding Legion's more flexible and also less visible traps, with them being more or less invisible. Not to mention how long it takes to place a Kapkan trap compared to simply throwing down a goo mine super quickly. Kapkan would still maintain a number of disadvantages compared to Legion, but with the trap vision, maybe more people would play him, and given how tactical and rewarding of careful play his gadget is, I feel like this would only be a good thing for Siege. Have any thoughts on Kapkan's traps compared to Legion's goo mines? Please feel free to post them in the comments. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. If you want updates on each new video, do remember to hit that notification bell.